In 1972, Mary Rogers wrote a comedic children's novel that detailed the day in the life of a 13-year-old girl who magically switches bodies with her mother. It was called Freaky Friday. The Walt Disney Company adapted the novel into movies 4 different times, including once in 1976 starring a young Jodie Foster. However, the third adaptation was the most popular version, done in 2003, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan. Well, 22 years later, Jamie and Lindsay are back for the sequel as Tess and Anna Coleman in Freakier Friday. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Freakier Friday. Freakier Friday. Written by Jordan Weiss, directed by Nisha Ganatra. Starring Jamie Lee Curtis, Lindsay Lohan, Julia Butters, Sophia Hammons, Manny, Jacinto, and Mark Harmon. And as usual, for a complete cast listing, you can go to the link in our show notes. This movie has quite a few cameos worth reading about or knowing that I do not want to spoil here. But again, for that complete cast listing, go to the link in our show notes. Freakier Friday is the sequel to 2003's Freaky Friday, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan, which is the remake of the Disney original Freaky Friday with Jodie Foster. Me and my sister grew up watching the original Freaky Friday on Betamax in the 90s. So when the remake came out, I remember being very excited about it, but it came out in 2003. So I had just gotten to college. I was doing my college thing, and I never got around to seeing it. So I never saw the remake of Freaky Friday, but I've seen plenty of Lindsay Lohan movies from that era. I've seen plenty of Disney films from that era, Disney and Disney Channel films from that era. So I'm very familiar with what you can expect from that era, and I'm very familiar with the storyline of the movie, but there were probably some things in the sequel that I didn't recognize as callbacks to the 2003 version of Freaky Friday. But for those of you that don't know, Freaky Friday is a movie about understanding, and it's about a mother and a daughter who essentially don't understand each other, don't get along. They switch bodies for a full day. After switching bodies, they come to an understanding, which then enhances and fixes their relationship. This film follows pretty much the same kind of premise, where this time you have Lindsay Lohan, who has a daughter, and she's raising her as a single parent, and her mother, Jamie Lee Curtis, is there to support her and to help her. And Lindsay Lohan's daughter, Harper, who goes to high school, has a nemesis. I am forgetting her name, Lily, I think her name is, and they have a rivalry at school. But then in kind of a Parent Trap situation or what have you, whatever the ones is where the twins meet each other, which is another Lindsay Lohan remake of an original Disney movie, she meets Harper's mother, Lindsay Lohan, which I'm just going to keep calling her Lindsay Lohan, even though that's not her character name. Harper's mother, Lindsay Lohan, meets Lily's father, Manny Jacinto, and they fall in love. And so then they plan to get married. And while they're doing all this family blending, essentially what begins to happen is the daughters don't get along so well. And because they don't get along so well, they are kind of thrown in with a psychic hilariously played by Vanessa Bayer, who then essentially says, y'all gotta understand each other so you can work this out, but she says it in a much more rhymey, fun way. And the four of them switch bodies. So, and this is gonna stay with me. So this is Lindsay Lohan switches bodies with her daughter, Harper, and Jamie Lee Curtis switches body with her essentially step granddaughter, Lily. And now the two pairs of them are running around on this Friday, trying not to let the secret out that they have switched bodies. Now, the premise then becomes the daughters are trying to break up the engagement / marriage, which is happening on Saturday. It's up to them to break up this marriage, because if they get married, there's a threat of the family moving to London, and Harper doesn't want that. And so that is the central conflict of the story. So what I think this movie does really well is it immediately puts in a premise in which we get to watch. Well, let me take a step back. The first thing is, when I see Lindsay Lohan, every time I see her on the screen now, I'm so happy to see her, because, you know, she went through a lot of like kind of public trauma, and I won't get into any of that stuff. You could probably Google and go back and see what all that was. But she went through a lot of like public trauma. And I remember the most recent time I saw her was in the Mean Girls remake. And I remember she walked out on stage on a cameo, and I was just so excited to see her. And that's because I grew up with Lindsay Lohan. You know, I really loved Mean Girls. She was kind of the it girl in the late 90s and early aughts. And then she kind of went through some very public turmoils. And so she had disappeared from the public eye for a while, or every time she was in the public eye, it was not for a great reason. But she's essentially turned it around and is starting to act again. So seeing her here was great. And then also seeing Jamie Lee Curtis, also great, who's been consistently working this entire time, but still, like, she's at a place where, like, they disappear women her age. They don't allow women her age to lead films like this. And she's leading a film like this. So it was great to see them. And this film recognizes that the treasure that it has is watching Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis be ridiculous and zany, if you will. So you have Lindsay Lohan, who is now her daughter, and you have Jamie Lee Curtis, who is now her step granddaughter. And there's all kinds of things that are happening. There's jokes about aging, obviously. There's things about understanding Gen Z as millennials, as boomers. All of those jokes are coming, and it's cute, as people would say. It's very cute to watch. And if you're familiar, especially if you are in your early to mid 40s, if you grew up with these movies, when it comes on, there's a bit of nostalgia, because the style is still very much that of like the Disney Channel original movies, of all the live action Disney movies that came out in the late 90s, early aughts that we kind of grew up with. This is a throwback to that era. They don't like shy away from that style. They just kind of update the lens a little bit. And I'm not certain about the director's work. I think this is the first time I've seen her name. I don't think she's a first-time director by any means, but I remember watching it and being like, wow, they really have a sense of what made these movies so fun growing up, because this is a very, very fun movie. I think the casting choices are very smart. They picked Julia Butters and Sophia Hammons to play essentially Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis, because they switch bodies with them. And so they kind of have to play like straight for the whole movie, meaning like the humor is not really generated with them. They're kind of thrust into a situation where it's adults in children's bodies, that's not generating the humor from the film. So seeing them, they're like, we just want to get back to being adults again. Whereas, and there are some jokes about youth and stuff in there, about, you know, being able to do stuff in youthful bodies that they're not able to do as a millennial or as a boomer. So that's fun there, and there's like a little bit of humor. There's a little bit of humor from there as well. All of that being said, I think the plot is it's thin, but really the plot is the vehicle so we can see Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis having a good time. And that's what they're doing in this film. There's zany situations that they're in, and like I said, engaging with the culture of the day, with Gen Z culture. They're very much it's a very much a fish out of water story, literally, in that way. And I will say, sitting there watching this, I remember thinking, I should not be in a theater for this. I should be home on my couch watching this. It felt unusual to be in a theater for this because it just doesn't feel like something that I needed to leave my house for. I'm a little surprised that they would not put this on Disney Plus, but I think it's not doing poorly. And when I say not doing poorly, I mean like critically, it seems to be doing okay. And box office wise, it seems to also be doing okay. So because of both of those, it might have been the right decision to put it into the theater, playing on the nostalgia of folks who are in their early to mid 40s that may have some time and money to go to the theater. And the reason why this is important to state is because it still makes me like, I wonder, based on the money that it will make either domestically or worldwide, will they try this again? Will they try the nostalgia bid to get us back into theaters for like little or known movies like this? Like for instance, The Parent Trap, which again, Lindsay Lohan already played in. Are they going to reach back and find those movies and start making the sequels to those? And they have in some cases already, but I'm wondering how far the rabbit hole goes in that regard, especially because I will watch it. I would have watched it on Disney Plus, but when to put on clothes, go to the theater and sit down in the theater, watch this, I remember thinking this probably would have been better on opening weekend with like a group of people who are all familiar with Freaky Friday. But right now it's kind of just me watching this essentially for work. So I remember thinking, man, it sure would be nice to be home on the couch, but that's not because I think it's not a good movie. And also, this film runs a little bit long. It's about an hour and 50 so minutes. When I think this probably could have easily been a tight 90. I think probably about an hour into the movie, I remember thinking there should not be 50 more minutes of movie to go. There's a portion during the end where obviously they're going to switch back into their bodies that I think they milked for a little too long. And they actually kind of engaged at the wrong part of the film. Like, I think it probably should have done like maybe 5 to 10 minutes earlier in the film, but they didn't quite get to that. And of course there's a happy ending, like as you would expect from a film like this. So it's by no means a perfect film, but it is a good film. Like I feel like if you like Freaky Friday, you will like this movie. If you like the original or the 2003, when I say the original, the 2003 original, or if you like the original, which the original 2003 one was a remake of, the plot is a little bit like, there's parts of it where I was like, I don't know if they went too far with this whole, like, we got to break up this marriage thing. Cause I'm like, you're still like ruining people's lives in a very specific way. But you know, again, vehicle for them to do other things, for us to see Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis having a good time in the film. And at the core of the story, it's a very heartwarming film. It's very much about mothers and daughters. There's a lot of mom stuff in it, which luckily, I mean, it didn't really make me cry. It's more mother-daughter stuff. So I don't know if my sister Marilyn, like if she saw this, I think it would probably pluck a different heartstring for her, specifically because it's specifically talking about mother-daughter relationships, which for me, maybe missed my mom, but it didn't quite make me like, you know, tear up as I've seen in other films when it's just kind of pure mom stuff, which feels a little bit different. So yeah, with all of that being said, I think this is a 3.5. I think it's a 3.5. I was struggling between a 3.25 and a 3.5, but honestly, I liked it. I left and I feel good. I would watch it again. I loved seeing Jamie Lee Curtis on screen. I love seeing Lindsay Lohan back. I felt good about it. I'm 41 years old and this hit for me. So I think for those of you that are interested, that saw the original, that really want to go out there and like, if you're interested in this picture nostalgia, go see it. Go see it. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. I mixed this episode, and the Patreon is going strong. There are now 3 episodes of I Don't Like That now available for Patreon members only. That's right. I'm developing a brand new podcast on Patreon. You can only listen/view. You can only view this podcast on Patreon. All I do is talk about things that I don't like. And it's funny because I recorded a full episode the other day and something else happened that I don't like, that I felt more strongly about. So I recorded another episode, and that that went out. So I might go back and pull the other one and make that episode 4. But the point is, you can only hear about or watch this on Patreon. Now, all of that money that you submit, all the money that I receive from the Patreon goes to helping Leaving the Theater exist. But what I'm learning is, as I continue to do this, I'm realizing that as I develop, I don't like that. There's a chance that it might come out of Patreon and I'll have to offer something new in the Patreon. So know that every cent that you're giving is still supporting this podcast. It helps make this podcast exist. But now I'm offering more content on Patreon, which means that's another podcast that has to exist, and you're already starting off supporting it well. I had to buy a new camera. I'm working on lighting. I'm continuing to improve every single week. If you want to watch that journey and be a part of something new that is continuing to develop, and if you want to keep supporting Leaving the Theater, go to patreon.com/Leaving the Theater or go to the link in our show notes. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Freakier Friday, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, Threads, or Letterboxd at It's Big Ron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other It's Big Ron Studio shows by following us on Instagram at It's Big Ron Studios. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening. So I'm very familiar with that style of film, what it looks like, all of that, kind of like what you can expect, from, it's funny, I'm like sitting in my car recording and there's a kid staring at me. Like, control your kids.